Here we go. Thank you very much to the organizers, first of all. Now I have to first get a little bit into this technique. Okay, so actually it's a little bit tricky to have the control of this presentation. Anyway, we want to first of all welcome to everybody actually to our workshop. The workshop title is how can sustainability demands of society and politics be met? And we will focus especially on the aviation industry, as we're having two experts of the aviation industry here in this workshop. Before I introduce our panelists, let me shortly introduce myself and then give you some maybe technical comments or details about this workshop. So my name is Boris. I'm head of marketing and business development of Cision, Germany, based here in Frankfurt. Sunny Frankfurt, I have to say, so it's very nice and warm. I hope wherever you are sitting, it's nice and warm at your place too. As mentioned, we will have a workshop. We thought we might make it into a little discussion, actually, about the aviation industry, about these very extraordinary times. So if you have any questions to our panelists, you can of course send them to us, and we will see if we will forward them to the panelists, if I will forward them to the panelists immediately, or maybe after our discussion. We thought we might give you quite some time, a few minutes of course, to answer or to let the panelists answer the questions. And now I want to finally introduce our panelists. I'm sorry that I took so long for the introduction. So first of all, of course, welcome Andrea Debbané. Very happy to have you here participating in this workshop.
Glad to be here, thank you.
Andrea, you were holding for many years different management positions within the Canadian government, with Coca-Cola in Japan, but also, and that's maybe most important for us for this workshop, at Airbus as Vice President of Sustainability and Responsibility, but also in the last 12 years as Executive Director of the Airbus Foundation. So what the Airbus Foundation is about is one of the things that we will of course talk about. So again, happy to have you here. And our second panelist is Rainer Ohler. So welcome to you too, Rainer. Happy to have you here. Rainer Ohler is co-founder of the Senior Strategists, an international network of consultants focusing on stakeholder relations and reputation management. But more important, of course, is Rainer Ohler's also very long experience in the aviation industry with Airbus, EADS, and DASA, and most recently, actually, you were Executive Vice President of Communications for Airbus, and therefore responsible for the global communication of the aircraft manufacturer. So again, welcome and thanks for having you here. We thought we might split this workshop or discussion actually in two parts. So first of all, maybe a general look on the aviation industry, and then second, to see or to get a little bit more into the details of Airbus, of your time actually, Andrea, with Airbus. But first, maybe let's start with the more general view on the aviation industry. Rainer, first question for you. So the motto of the Responsible Leadership Conference is responsible leadership after the crisis. For sure, we cannot say that this crisis is over, and we still don't have no idea or clue about how long this crisis will be. So especially also for the aviation industry that really got affected by the crisis. So maybe you can get us or give us an idea about what do you think, what phase is the aviation industry currently in this crisis?
I think, Boris, we are in a phase of unprecedented uncertainty. I think that's all what we can say. Aviation has seen the worst crisis ever in its history in the last 6 months, and we have basically come from full throttle to full stop. We used to have about 100,000 flights every day. 40 to 50,000 flights were scheduled airliner flights. In April, more than 70% of all scheduled flights were cancelled globally. That, I think, was rock bottom. Then we've seen some recovery in June and in July. And Airbus and airlines made big plans to bring aircraft back into service. But since August, we are really seeing that the demand has reached a plateau and is not getting up any further. We are now at roughly 50% of what the business was, and experts are increasingly skeptical about further growth. Industry recovery seems now to only reach the low points of the forecasts that we have, and that, I think, is a real concern. Airlines are waiting for passengers, and the passengers obviously are waiting for the vaccines. And once that the vaccines are there, recovery will come. But nobody knows to which level. Traditionally, recovery comes fast and supersedes GDP growth. So 2% GDP growth traditionally would lead to 4% PAX growth. Optimists therefore see aviation recovering 22 or in 23 at the latest. Pessimists see the recovery not before 24 or 25. There are even some who say it will never fully recover. And the key question is, will business travel fully rebound, or has Skype or Zoom, Teams, and many other of these technologies taken over?
Okay, Rahmen, you mentioned that you mentioned passenger figures actually. So the overview that you just gave us is overall, right? So that's for passengers, but also for the cargo part of the aviation industry, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have
passenger? I focus on the passengers. Cargo hasn't been as much because cargo, that's relatively secured ways of travel.
Yeah.
For and containers. So that's not the same. I focus really on the packs.
Yeah. Then of course the question is always if cargo can, let's say, hold up a little bit the heavy effect that passenger aviation went through. But so far, I think, experts are very pessimistic about that there is not enough cargo to be transported to change the passengers' figures, actually. Okay, Rainer, how do you evaluate the industry's overall reaction to the pandemic? So, I mean, you followed the industry for many, many years from the inside. You were part of the industry, and you were still very close and very well connected to it. How do you think, how did the industry reacted to this crisis? Like, do you have the impression that the key players of the industry saw that or noticed that this crisis is a completely different one from all the other crises that they experienced before?
Well, I think that overall, we can say that the industry reacted in a formidable way. In a big international effort, packs were taken home quickly, even, stranded packs on remote islands. So I think airlines did their really very best with the support of governments. And the manufacturing side, I think they took serious measures immediately when the crisis started. What impressed me very much was that the Airbus CEO called upon governments not to help Airbus, but to help their customers, so the airlines. That was exactly the opposite of what his big competitor was doing. He was asking for money for his own company. So I think the reaction was good. Many players immediately seized the opportunity for long overdue changes and restructuring. I think I can mention Lufthansa and Safran here in this panel. They really acted fast, and I think what is interesting to see how much they secured the supply chains and how much focus immediately was on keeping the supply chains alive, because once a supply chain is damaged, seriously damaged, it'll be very difficult to get the supply chain back up, and thus the production. So I think that has been achieved, at least so far. And I think when the pandemic was officially declared, when was it, March 11th or something, I think that was the day when everybody in the industry realized this is an unprecedented crisis, bigger and deeper than ever before.
You so maybe just to finish with the first part of this discussion of this workshop. I mean, after all, the focus of this event is on responsibility. So organizations can have responsibility, but also individuals, of course. So regarding individuals, how do you rate the presence of managers and C-level people, for example, within the aviation industry in this crisis? Were they very present, actually? Because of course you had also other industries, for example, Volkswagen, where CEOs were very present on social media, for example. So is there something similar in the aviation industry?
Well, I don't think that aviation can claim that they had Dies or Tim Höttges. I think we still see that once again, a crisis triggers, many leaders to go quiet and don't communicate too proactively. Nobody wants to say something wrong. Nobody wants to be too optimistic. Nobody wants to be too pessimistic. And nobody wants to help and wants to be reminded of what he said only a few weeks later. So in a way, it is understandable. But what I think we still have to all understand much better is that already describing the crisis, explaining the measures, and sharing the uncertainties, can be a major contribution to regaining trust. I think that is still something that we communicators have not yet fully communicated to the big players on the C-level. But there were some examples of good communicators, and I would like to mention just a few.
Yeah. Just go ahead.
Lufthansa CEO Carsten Spohr deserves some kudos here. Yeah, and in particular, when you talk to journalists, they will all mention that he was able in a very good manner to explain the dilemma that the company was in and the crisis that hit Lufthansa. I think he's an example. Maybe an even better example is Alexandre de Juniac, the former Air France CEO, who is now the chief of IATA. And I think he has done a great job of communicating. He has been giving a press conference or a press briefing nearly every week, with interesting numbers, trends, developments, observations. This was clearly an outstanding industry communication that he did on behalf of all airlines. And I've also seen some strong communications, and interestingly by two low-cost carrier CEOs. One was Joe Varadi, the CEO of Wizz Air, and Michael O'Leary from Ryanair. I think they both did some outstanding communication, but of course, they also see the strong marketing potential, not only the reputational and internal communication and external communication potential, but they see a market aspect in their communication, and that was very visible. But again, unfortunately, not on the level of Oettkes and Dies. So there is room for improvement.
Okay, thank you very much, Rainer. I really like to go ahead right now and Andrea share a small part, for sure, just of your rich experience within Airbus, but also in general with the responsibility and sustainability area. So first of all, maybe so you have been, as I mentioned already, you have been responsible for the responsibility and sustainability part at Airbus for many years, and also executive director of the Airbus Foundation, which is active in humanitarian aid and also youth development. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about the foundation, actually, since I'm sure that it's not always on, so familiar to everybody what the foundation is about.
Okay, sure. Well, the Airbus Foundation is a corporate foundation. It was set up over 12 years ago, and its purpose was really to house in one place the company's philanthropic activities, so really community engagement activities, which is one small part of, not just Airbus's, but I would say an overall company's responsibility and sustainability agenda. Specifically, as you said, it was about being able to support the humanitarian community and youth development. Why did we choose those two areas? It was very simple. It was because we had the hard assets to be able to support the humanitarian community, especially in times of crises, emergency response, disaster relief, by being able to give our products and services at every stage of a crisis, right after a natural disaster, with satellite imagery for assessment, or with helicopters to provide search and rescue missions, aircraft to be able to send personnel and cargo goods that were needed, even deploying field hospitals. And the reason we focused on the youth development is we really believed, and our CEO at the time really believed, that we could help young people not just support their career long-term in aerospace, but really develop themselves to be the best individuals by tapping into, if you like, the passion that we had of our employees to be able to work with young people, work with NGOs around the world. So I think the message here that I would give to anyone who is thinking about a corporate foundation or is looking at philanthropy or community citizenship, it is in addition to financial support, that's obviously very important when you're working with NGOs and partners, but it's also tapping into the company's core assets and really understanding where those can be of benefit to society, whether those are hard assets, like it was in the case of Airbus with its products and services, or whether it's in soft assets, human capital, know-how. That's also very important and very beneficial for civil society and for partners. Sometimes you end up co-creating, and you're able to give back in ways where you're not able to find these, say, products or services on the market, and you can be of value that way.
You have been, I mean, based on your rich and very long experience in that area, how do you think did responsibility and sustainability change within these years? I mean, were the goals always the same? Where maybe the importance of this area within the companies always the same, or did it change? Maybe you can share a little bit of your experience with us.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, again, there's a big difference when we say corporate citizenship versus responsibility and sustainability. Corporate citizenship is when, a company has traditionally set aside a certain percentage of their profits and they're giving it to society, either, in philanthropy with cash donations or with pro bono. When we talk about responsibility, sustainability, we're talking about the practices of a company to really operate in the most responsible and sustainable manner, their business operations throughout their value chain. I think traditionally it probably would have been set in the UN Global Compact, where there are 10 principles around human rights, labor issues, environment, and anti-corruption. 12,000 companies are now part of that. It's a voluntary charter, if you like. What we've seen over the years is that these soft laws have become hard laws, especially in the last several years, and they're crystallized into legislation or regulation like the EU directive on reporting on non-financial matters, or the French government's Duty of Care Act, or the UK government's Modern Slavery Act. And what it's asking of companies is to go above and beyond just looking at its own direct operations, but looking across its entire value chain to take measures to be transparent, first of all, to identify where their own business could have an impact on society across that value chain, and also be able to take measures to mitigate those risks. And this is the real, if you like, trend that we're seeing now, and it puts a lot more emphasis on companies to be proactive across their value chain. So when you're talking first-tier suppliers, this might not be so difficult, but when you have to go further down, right down to source, this is a big and new, I would say, onus on companies that we haven't seen before. What it means in terms of how a company has to take that on, I think it means you need to really, follow regulation carefully. Responsibility, sustainability needs to be not just on the CEO agenda, but also on the entire executive management's agenda, and also on the board agenda. And you have to make sure that you've got the processes and the policies that are embedded throughout the company to be able to respond and put in place measures for responsible and sustainable behaviors. And you have to engage with all stakeholders. This is also something that not all companies have been doing regularly. And when I say all stakeholders, it's not just your typical investors, shareholders, customers, suppliers. It also means engaging with civil society, with NGOs, so that you can really understand what the expectations of your larger stakeholder group are of the company. And you also need to work within your industry sector and also do cross-industry work to be able to put a really meaningful, I think, sustainability and responsibility agenda together. At Airbus many years ago, we were working within a group, which was the Air Transport Action Group, working closely even with the competition, with Boeing, with Bombardier, with Embraer, together with IATA, the airlines, the engine manufacturers, with the airports and the Airport Association, air traffic management, because on the area and in the subjects of environment, as an example, we had to work together. It made sense to work collectively, and we did work together. And I believe the industry continues to work together, and industry should do that because there's more power when you work together. It also means looking at inviting new sectors and working more collaboratively. At the time, we reached out to the United Nations Environment Program and started to work very constructively with the Convention on Biodiversity. And you might have some people say, well, what does that have to do with aviation? In fact, it was quite critical because the biggest threat to biodiversity were invasive species. And of course, aviation could be key in that area. So working with airlines, educating airlines so that they could also educate their own stakeholders, their own passengers. There was also an opportunity because through aviation, people come, passengers or citizens come into direct contact with a richness of diversity on the planet. So again, it was another way of awareness, of educating, of cascading that message. So I think it's really important as well to broaden your stakeholder group and making sure you're tapping into that stakeholder group regularly, so you really know what is important and what the expectations are of your business.
Thanks a lot for this very deep insight, Andrea. Actually, time is running, so I think we maybe one short question to both of you, and maybe I would be happy to get a very personal answer of you or idea. So, in your personal opinion, Rainer, maybe let's start with you. What are the most important lessons that managers, directors, executives should learn from this crisis, and maybe what's the most challenging lesson they learn from this crisis?
I think the most challenging lesson is that a crisis can be of unprecedented size and impact. The second challenging lesson is that without communication, there is no way to keep trust up and to bring the teams back into the office, regain trust with customers, get the business back on track. That is another, I think, not always easy lesson to learn. And the most important, I think, is how important it is to stay calm and get your leadership team to really work as a team in a crisis and make the team your absolute priority. Then you can get through it.
Okay, thank you, Rainer. Andrea, last word from you, actually. Same question. What do you think was the most important, or maybe even the most challenging lessons of this crisis?
I think that companies who perhaps were already very ahead in terms of the responsibility, sustainability agenda, and really, incorporating that within their culture, will come out of this, I think, stronger, because, concretely, if you see companies who are already practicing flexible working hours or telework and remote working before COVID hit, they're in a better position now to be able to implement that on a long-term basis, because they not just got the infrastructure in place, the culture is there, the ways of working are there. Companies that would have put in place a responsible and sustainable supplier agenda are going to be in a better position. Why? Because it just means you're closer to your stakeholders. So you'll have more transparency, you'll have more knowledge about your supply chain, more data. So you'll be able to react much more, with more agility. You'll be able to have flexible sourcing. You'll know where the risks are, and you'll be able to help those suppliers who are in risk areas be able to recover, as opposed to companies who are struggling just to get that data and awareness of where is their full supply chain and how have they been impacted. Innovation is another big one, because if you're dealing with societal issues, you're challenging your own company, your employees, to think out of the box. And I think this is going to be very important now in the post-pandemic and during the pandemic, to tap into non-traditional ways of thinking, to get people to think out of the box, to come up with solutions. So I think those who have already, put that sustainability, responsibility agenda in place should be in a better position.
I want to thank you very, very much for those deep insights, for your thoughts, actually, and for sharing the experiences with us. So I hope to the audience that you enjoyed the talk as much as I did. And yeah, just wishing you a beautiful day. Enjoy the other sessions of the Responsible Leadership Conference.
Ja, hallo. Wir beginnen in einer Minute mit dem nächsten Vortrag der Bedienung. Welcome back. 1 minute presentation. It will be a very interesting presentation. It will be Nord Stream 2.